Hey guys, what's going on today? In this video, we're going to be talking about threat and how you can somewhat optimize it to make sure you're not losing threat on pull. And there's two ways you can go about doing that. I'm going to talk about those in this video. Feel free to use the timestamps below to skip around. So the first option is actually pre-casting Breath of Fire. So what a lot of players run into is that they try to start a pull by casting Keg Smash, and then they go into their Breath of Fire, back into a Keg Smash. And at this point, you're 3 globals in, with fairly specific area of effect spells with Keg Smash and Breath of Fire being a frontal, 2 like a cleave off of one mob. So if you're trying to group mobs up, this necessarily won't be that efficient, especially if you have some DPS who are just like blowing cooldowns on pull. Now, the way that you can help alleviate this is actually by opening up with a Breath of Fire before actually pulling. And so what this allows you to do is go right into a Spinning Crane Kick with a Charred Passions buff, meaning you're going to be getting a lot more damage out of Spinning Crane Kick about by 50%, since that's how Charred Passions work. The caveat with this is that most players do tend to run Scalding Brew. In the top 50 logs, I would say about 75% of them run Scalding, and this is because of the additional Keg Smash damage. But if you're running Salsa Bim Strength, you're already going to be getting a Breath of Fire reset pretty early into the pull. Now, Breath of Fire is obviously important because it is a damage reduction dot that is pretty much going to have 100% uptime, or at least it's the goal of it. But the idea when you're running Salsa Bim is that you can Breath of Fire, you can go in with a Keg Smash to pull into a Spinning Crane Kick back into a Keg Smash, and then this is when you can apply your Breath of Fire. Generally, on pull as well, you're going to be using things like Dampen Harm or Diffuse Magic or Fortifying Brew or a stored up Purified Chi / Celestial Brew combo. So you should be pretty tanky on pull. You can also have a healer give you a DR. But because you're already getting a reset with your Salsa Bim, there isn't really a requirement to cast Breath of Fire second when you pull. Now, this is a little weird to learn, and it also means you're going to be dropping Scalding Brew if you're someone who has been playing with it, but you might find this rotation actually a little bit easier. When you're playing Scalding Brew, hitting your windows on your Spinning Crane Kick with Charred Passions active is the only way for you to actually enable yourself to have full uptime. There's obviously like weird nuances when you get into things like Blackout combo with an Empowered Breath of Fire, where Salsa Bim will actually then overlap your higher DR for the lower DR. So you do want to be a little careful of that, but if you are struggling with threat on pull, running Salsa Bim Strength will help you early on. So you can Breath of Fire, roll in, Keg Smash into a Spinning Crane Kick, back into a Keg Smash, and then you still have Charred Passions, so there's not really a requirement, I'm like air quoting here, to apply Breath of Fire immediately, unless you're in danger, because that 5% DR is pretty nice. So that would be my suggestion. Again, if you aren't running Salsa Bim Strength, I don't recommend doing this because you won't have Breath of Fire for 15 seconds compared to not having it for the first global of a pull, which you're not even going to be using Breath of Fire anyways. The second option in order to help with threat is very nuanced, and it's not necessarily like the most interesting playstyle method, but I found that it actually has helped alleviate some of the early damage on pulls. It helps stagger out auto attacks early on, and generally, once you get in the habit of using it consistently, it's actually extremely powerful. And that's going to come with the Talent Choice Summon Black Ox statue. Now, there's a few ways to get this. Not everyone plays Lighter Than Air. You can always drop that. I know some people play Vigorous Expulsion, which I don't personally play this because I think the healing component of this is not super great. You can also play Improved Touch of Death, or you can drop this, I should say. Generally speaking, you could just not run this to get it, or you can continue playing Letter of Air. I know some people also play Hasty Provo. You can drop this to get Black Ox Statue, but basically you have a couple of options down here in the tree that you could swap out for to get Summon Black Ox Statue. Now, at its core, if you're like using it essentially from your spellbook, it requires you to place it down, which is a little annoying, having to hit your button and then clicking. Some players like this. I personally don't, especially when playing Brewmaster. But what you can do is you can actually create a macro to do at cursor. So right here I have it, /cast at cursor summon Black Ox Statue. And what this does now is I can now move this wherever my cursor is without having to click. So essentially it's decreasing my actions per minute that I can physically do as a human, because I don't have to hit a keybind and then click somewhere. I can just simply aim this wherever I feel like having it, and it'll move. So that's the first part, is setting this up to make sure it's actually at cursor and remembering to aim it. So as I'm running into this pull, let's pretend this is a pack in Mythic Plus, you can actually drop your statue in the pull, and this will actually instantly taunt all the mobs, and their first melee swing will go onto the Ox statue. Now, It's unlikely that it's going to die immediately, because you can see here it has 4.3 million health. It'll take a lot of damage, but generally it won't disappear. So what I would do is I would drop this statue, roll in, and then you can actually AoE taunt. And now you can see that provoke is on every single mob, meaning that I'm generating high levels of threat. So my keg smash, my spinning crane kick, my breath of fire, my exploding keg, whatever it might be, is going to generate a high amount of threat. So again, we'd be kind of rolling into this next pack. We would drop statue, we'd keg smash, we'd AoE taunt, which is off the global cooldown, into a breath of fire. And now I've talked about this in a previous video, like back in Dragonflight, but I'll also talk about it here. You can make a macro to essentially have it's a modification macro. So if you hold down a modification button like Control, Shift, or Alt, it'll change the macro into something else. So that macro specifically, it's going to be located in my Discord because it is a lot of text. I'll also try to leave it in the comments down below if I remember. I'll pin it. So it's show tooltip provoke, and it's cast no mod provoke, meaning that whenever I hit my keybind, which is F, it'll taunt whatever mob I'm targeting. But the rest of the macro is where it kind of gets interesting. So it's target exact, and it's a mod alt, and it will target my Black Ox statue. And then if I'm also holding down my alt key, when I hit F, it'll cast provoke at my Black Ox statue, and then if the mod alt exists, it'll target my last target. So I don't think you'll actually be able to see it here, but yeah, you won't be able to see it because it's going to happen so fast that it won't ever change your rotation. But basically what's happening is I'm targeting this. When I hold down alt and taunt, it's going to, in a sequence of this, it's going to target my Ox statue, taunt it, and then target the last target within 0.1 seconds or whatever. So it allows you to essentially have a mass AoE button on arguably an 8 to 10 second cooldown, because Summon Ox statue is a 10-second CD, provoke is an 8. And that's actually two ways that I've been able to manage threat. I wanted to make a video kind of going over it. Obviously I'm just hitting training dummies, but these two things have been extremely helpful. They're a little bit more, caveat. You have to drop Scalding Brew, ideally, and play Salsa Bim Strength, which isn't a bad idea. About 25% of players are still playing Salsa Bim. 75% of players are playing Scalding Brew. You can obviously have Summon Black Ox statue with this macro sequence. It is very weird to get used to. It does take some practice. But once you get used to it, it's actually pretty easy. And what's really nice is Black Ox statue used to be very difficult to get, and they made it really easy by putting it more towards the center of the tree. There's some good path nodes that you're already taking, things like Diffuser, Eulons, or Fortifying Brew, so you're easily able to grab this. And luckily, we have a good class tree now where there's a lot of alternative options where you don't have to play Lighter Than Air, or you don't have to play Improved Touch of Death, or you don't have to play Vigorous Expulsion or Hasty Provo. So overall, that's always good. Obviously, playing with an MD class or playing with DPS who know how to wait 2 seconds, but I know there's a lot of annoyance in pugs where people just kind of want to go big damn, and having an AoE taunt on an 8-second cooldown is pretty strong. Anyways, I hope those tips helped. Let me know if you have any questions down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.